One of the things that impressed me the most about this is it's not a case of the character is there for, for a little comic jolt of some kind. The character keeps building and accumulating power and skills and looking more inward as the series goes on. And I guess my first question is, was that always the case with this character? Was that always the intention with this character? Or was it something that you discovered as you were writing?
Yeah, I mean, no, it was always the case.
Yeah.
And that's why casting the role of Taylor took on a tremendous amount of it. First of all, congratulations, by the way, on this, having known you a long time.
Oh.
So happy that you're doing this. It's great.
Thanks.
Yeah, really a great thing to celebrate TV industry.
Yeah, great.
Thanks for having us here. We, from the beginning, felt like part of what the show has always examined is this question of what we decide the extrinsic characteristics tell us about the intrinsic. And the show is really interested in misdirection in that area and in why we sometimes as people confuse certain characteristics for having a certain meaning attached to it. And so we knew we wanted to bring a character in who's about whom the extrinsic seemed like it wouldn't fit, but that Bobby Axelrod would see something else in them. Mm-hmm. And it was really important to us to find an actor who could do that. And when we realized this character should be gender non-binary, we auditioned all manner, cis people, trans people, gender non-binary people, and because we knew the most important thing was find an actor who could pull this off and who you would believe was somebody that Bobby Axelrod, in whom Ax could recognize as kind of intellect, something kindred. And then we as an audience might confuse what that, we might make certain assumptions about what he saw that was kindred. Mm-hmm. And then it might turn out to be a whole bunch of other things also. Mm-hmm. And so through a series, how many auditions did we, 4 auditions?
3.
3 with us or 2 with us?
2 with you.
2 with us, and then, yeah, the third one, we realized, and then through talking to Asia, we realized Asia was the person.
But I think part of what you're asking is, for this kind of thing, like as show creators, there was definitely a possibility where you go down the road and you have to then build a route of retreat if it's not working out.
Yes, and the reverse
we
is
were
also
blessed
true.
in this case because it was the opposite. We pressed our advantage when we realized the actor we had.
Mm. Why did it have to be Asia? Why did you? What was it? What was that spark? No, I'm always curious about that because you read like you read a dozen or 100 actors for a role.
So many.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think it is one of those questions that answers itself.
Right.
When you watch the show, it was clear. I will say that in working with Asia in the room, we had a shorthand immediately.
Yeah, the intelligence, the ability that Asia has to make adjustments and take feedback.
Oh, yeah.
It just immediately seemed like this would be a great
And then we should really
relationship.
let Asia talk, but I will say that
Do you think they want to hear
a huge part
Asia
of a huge part of it was that everyone on our show, one of the things we all talk about is these are people who love doing what they do, even when they're in difficult situations. They're getting off on what they're doing, and they have a self-awareness about that and a sense of humor. So you're right, nobody's coming in to be a punchline, but it was important that the actor had the ability to have a sense of humor and understand it. And so Asia had this intellect and this sense of humor, and when we would give notes in shorthand, right from the beginning, was able to make those adjustments, and we were all on the same wavelength within minutes of meeting.
Did you have a particular set of ideas or a particular approach that you brought into this from the very beginning, or was it entirely a process of discovering as you go?
Both.
Okay.
I had made some choices to go into my initial audition, and then I received some very helpful feedback from the casting director and a little bit of insight into where the character might be going and a little bit more about how their personality might be. And so I took that information and I then made some more choices and came into the second audition with Brian and David with those choices. And as they said, I feel like they were able to convey information or direction to me in a way that I was just able to pick up on. I understood what they meant. That doesn't mean that I was then able to give them what they wanted necessarily, but it happened to work out. So, yeah.
It's interesting to me to meet you in person, just like in real life, as they say these days, these wacky kids. Because you don't carry yourself the way that character does. You don't have the same walk. You don't have the same posture. You don't make eye contact in the same way. So these are all choices. So if you can, if it's even possible, explain these sorts of things. Why are you making those choices, and what are they doing to put across the idea of this character?
A lot of it is instinctual. The way that Taylor speaks, the cadence that Taylor uses, how quick Taylor is to get to the heart of the matter and to the point. Someone who speaks like that instinctually, to me, is going to hold someone's eye contact the whole time because they're not afraid of what they're saying, they're sure of what they're laying out. Someone who is unsure of themselves, to me, can't look someone in the eye. And Taylor is very sure of themselves. And I would say even in the moments when Taylor maybe isn't sure of themselves, they're certainly trying to convey that, they do know what's going on and they're on top of it. And then in terms of the way that they walk, a lot of that is actually the costume. Slipping into Taylor's wardrobe, shoes, pants, belt, the tie that's all the way up, the shirt that's buttoned all the way up. It limits one's movement, actually, in a way. For any of you who are wearing, suit coats and ties, you know this, and so that will naturally, for me, inform the way that a character is able to. I mean, Taylor, for instance, can't cross their legs comfortably in the pants that they're wearing, and that will inform the way that Taylor is sitting in a chair, or the way that Taylor is standing, or if the button is buttoned all the way up, that informs how much Taylor can sort of move their head, and all of that ultimately informs the character and what the audience is seeing.
You have this, it's almost like a T-square posture a lot of the time. Like there's a straight line across the shoulders and you're like that. Did you think about, did you have any models for this performance? Not entirely, but just other characters or other performers that you drew some inspiration from for one piece or another?
There are secret things that we're not saying.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, it's just like, okay.
Yeah, there is a secret thing that I won't share.
Yeah.
But on top of that, I'll just say that when I got the audition for the show and I went and I binge watched season 1, I knew that I needed to show up fully prepared, and that you shouldn't show up, not that you shouldn't show up fully prepared to any job, but that this job in particular required me to be even more on top of my game than everyone else that had already been on the show since season 1. And I think that Taylor arrives to Axe Capital in the same way, ready to say, I know I have just as much, if not more, to give than everyone else here, and I'm just as worthy of all of these people. And so that's how I, as Asia, entered into working on season 2 as an actor, and I think that's also how Taylor enters into working at Axe Capital.
Now, when the character begins, they are an intern, right? And then by the end, what is Taylor's
Chief
title?
Investment Officer.
CIO.
It's like, how to succeed in business by really trying is going to be the alternate title of this season. And yet, here's another thing that's interesting about it. Your character is a character who would, on almost any other show, being gender non-binary would be the heart of everything on the show. And it's not only is it often tangential to the action that you're going through, but one of the things that distinguishes Taylor is this kind of wall that goes up. It's like, you're not going to get in my head. And the phrase, I've had 987 hours of therapy, repeats twice, right? I like the idea that Taylor has been like keeping, I imagine, hatch marks on a sheet of paper of how many hours. Like it's prison. Like they're doing time in prison.
Taylor might just know.
Or just, I mean, just the hours are logged. Like, they just know.
Because a lot of that thing you said about eye contact and stuff, I mean, you definitely gave thought to Taylor's affect. We talked about how much affect, and so when you tie in the therapy thing, there's a question of how emotive. That's a real choice that Asia made the whole time. We were all conscious of. So is it somebody who looks you in the eye because they also, from a young age, taught themselves to do that?
Totally.
And yet it seems to me that the main dramatic conflict for Taylor in this season, and who knows what's going to happen in future seasons, is it has nothing to do with gender identity per se, but it's more about this idea of Bobby almost seems like the devil in this episode, the way that he talks to you. Like he's constantly urging you to let go of your conscience, your guilt, and all of this stuff. And a lot of those scenes that you find yourself in, the big question is, am I with the firm or am I with the human race? You know, like you're expressing sympathy for people who might be hurt by what the firm is up to, but that is competing against the desire to succeed, prove yourself, and be a badass.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it's all about, right? Mm-hmm. When did you just decide we're not, this is where the focus is going to be? I mean, I'm wondering if there was almost a kind of an extra dramatic, almost political intention behind that.
There's I would say, it's not, everything you said is right. There's another reason though, right? Taylor quotes Taleb, quotes Nassim Taleb. So there might be sort of philosophical, theological reasons for Taylor taking the position that they take.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you watch it with that in mind, I think that exists. The show's definitely interested in why things like intellect, charisma, charm stand in for qualities of character, and the world has certainly made us even more interested in that question. I mean, as you know, like Dave and I were thinking about that stuff before the first season, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that people missed that was going on in the first season, but it was there,
Mm-hmm.
and it just got amplified in the second season, partially because of what was going on in the world.
And I don't think that Axe is coaching evil, per se.
Mm-hmm.
He's trying to strip away things that are going to interfere with pure profitability and success in this person. And if that smells a little evilish, then maybe that's the case. But like as a character, he's not thinking, oh, I can corrupt this
Oh,
person.
no,
He's
certainly
thinking,
not.
I need to optimize this person for
Right.
my-
Are they utilitarian?
Yeah.
Are they utilitarian? I mean, these are we're really interested in the
Well,
questions.
these are the philosophical questions.
We're
This
very-
is the heart of it.
We're interested in those questions. None of us have all the answers, but we've been really interested in that question since the two of us and Andrew Ross Sorkin thought up the show, and the two of us have obviously since the first episode been trying to solve it. And when you have actors like Asia and Giamatti and Damien, Maggie Siff and Malin Ackerman, you really have the ability to like do a serious level of inquiry.
To what extent do those philosophical questions play into your thoughts on a scene, on an individual scene? Are you keeping those big issues in mind, or is it more about just the actions in the scene for you?
It's about the actions in the scene.
Yeah.
I would say, in particular, watching, no spoilers, but watching the season finale, where I can talk about that.
Has everybody
It's
seen
aired.
the show?
I don't.
mean,
It's aired.
Yeah. Well, just where Bobby has this moment with Wendy, where he says to her, like, "What if I felt like everything was wrong? Everything I'd done had been wrong. Would you help me right it all?" And that moment for me, having watched Taylor's journey, it's heartbreaking for me because Taylor has grown to feel like what they're doing is justifiable because Bobby has said it's okay. And
Yes.
Bobby has said, like, look, just donate and then you can fly on the private jet. And I think that that's a way
That
of
was
Bobby
chilling.
justifying to himself that he is a good person because he does those things. He donates to charities even though he's still doing things that are morally and ethically questionable. And so I think at the end when you have Taylor as CIO, having followed Bobby's example and feeling pretty good about the fact that they've been able to maintain their moral and ethical center and still have this new apartment, fly a private jet, have all these new amenities. And then at the end, you have Bobby going, but I was all wrong and I want to change it all. And that's, to me, what's so exciting. I'm so excited for what's going to happen in season 3, which I don't even know. Just to see how that in particular all plays out for Taylor especially.
There are so many moments where the scenes between Bobby and Taylor are just, mwah, they're great. And I wrote down a number of quotes here that I was going to ask you about, but it suddenly occurs to me as I'm looking at them, it's like Bobby is talking to Taylor, but Bobby is also, it's like Bobby talking into a mirror, which is interesting considering what an incredibly different person Bobby is externally from Taylor. And he says things like, you love winning and being thought of as good or in direct conflict. And my favorite is you and I talking about the bicycle. Can you sort of describe this, the bicycle movie story that you tell? The moment where you lift the hands off the handlebars?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a moment where Taylor is talking about wanting to be the person who is not in control for a moment and is just allowing life to happen to them, as opposed to being the person who is orchestrating the destiny of everyone around them. And that Taylor feels really uncomfortable with having the ability to do that, the same way that Bobby has the ability to do that. And Bobby is saying, stop being uncomfortable with it, just do it.
Right, and then
And-
he said,
and
It
do
leaves you with the question, though.
Yeah.
Says when you get there, you say, that bicycle movie where at the end the character just takes their hands off the thing and
Handlebars,
and lets
I
the
always wanna
other
be that
people pass.
biker.
I want to
Yeah.
be
And
that biker.
glides.
Yeah.
And glides, and I want to be that biker. And then Axe says,
he
"Well,
says,
yeah."
you and I
No.
don't get to glide, we churn.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's some very deep psychological stuff happening on both sides of this relationship. What do you get out of those scenes? Like as an actor, when you're playing scenes with Damian Lewis, what is that like? I mean, I've talked to the guy for maybe 5 minutes, so I don't have a sense of him, but he seems like really intense to the point where he would rattle you. Is that not? And maybe it's just the characters he plays.
Interesting.
But
I was not rattled. He's so generous and considerate and kind and compassionate and down to earth. He has the ability to be totally engaged with you in the moment, and then they call roll, and then you just snap into it, and you're in the scene living truthfully in the moment and reacting truthfully in the imaginary circumstances of the world. And I think, having a partner as gracious as Damien has been extraordinary for me as an actor, because I'm only as good as my scene partner allows me to be, and he's so gracious. So whatever you're observing in the scene that's working between us, it's just as much because of him as it is me, certainly. And I will also say that because Damien has such an ability to listen and react truthfully in the moment, I'm able to be totally absorbed in the world with him, and that is a great joy and a great adventure.
as I watched this character's story unfold, I had this reaction. I don't have it very often because I'm so jaded, and I've been watching television for a living for longer than some of the people in this room have been alive. I just had my own horrible existential moment here. But it's very rare. The sign of a great character for me is you get to the point where you feel like you know them, like you know somebody in your life, and you sort of start to anticipate the way that they're going to react. You feel like not only do the character feels comfortable in their own skin, but you, the viewer, do too. And I wonder was there a certain point during production of this season when you felt like, yes, I have fully inhabited Taylor, like I got this?
That's interesting. I mean, I think my first day on set, which was for episode 1, which was where Taylor talks about being a vegan and that whole scene with Mafee, I mean, that was my first day on set, and so I was definitely still sort of gaining my bearings, and I also didn't know at that time how often I would be coming back or what Taylor's journey would be. But once I got the script for episode 2, and we shot episode 2, and we did the balcony scene where Axe and Taylor have that conversation about the fact that Taylor's difference is actually an asset. That's when I really understood that Taylor was going to be a major player in the show, and that meant that I also was going to be a major player in the show, and that was when I felt the congruency of Taylor and I really come together.
I just wanted to, before you talked about Taylor being a recurring character, but Asia's a series regular now.
Right.
So Taylor's fully part of the fabric of this world. And the other thing about Damien, I would just say, it's so funny to hear you describe him that way. He's hilarious and has an incredible sense of humor.
Yeah.
Giamatti's hilarious. I mean, that is one of the great, don't you think? I mean, things about this cast is they not only they're all funny, like a lot of people can be funny, they love to laugh at each other's jokes too. It's incredibly warm and inviting, so that when somebody comes into the world,
that can be rare with certain actors. They mostly, you could say, like their own jokes. So our cast is super generous.
Our cast is special in that way. Damien loves to laugh, and if you score, if you're in a scene, nobody's trying to win the scene. Like everybody is trying to lift everybody else up. That's just we got very lucky with the group of people we're getting to do this with.
All right, so now I'm going to float something super geeky to you, and if you feel free to laugh in my face if I've gone too far here. But the name Taylor Mason. a mason creates bricks for building, right? I mean, that's, they're brick people. And a tailor alters existing clothes or fabric to fit someone. So you've got somebody who's creating, you've got one word is creating out of nothing and the other is adapting.
Taylor also, the name, and I asked them if they knew this, and they said they didn't, but Taylor, the name itself, means masculine, feminine.
Oh.
That's the etymology of the word Taylor, which I learned when I looked it up.
Did we know or not?
I asked you if
Did
you knew,
you
you said no.
Did we?
Did we? I don't know. I don't know if we did. But
Act like you meant to do it.
The character came to us by the first name primarily, and it just it felt right instinctively from the beginning. And some people suggested, maybe we should make long lists and entertain other names.
Yeah,
and
that was
we
the
were
name
not
from the
interested in
beginning.
that. Right from the beginning, it felt like we could both see this person. And then we concocted that last name to have some buildery.
yeah. And the other meaning of, what about the secret society of Masons?
Right, right.
Totally.
Entering into a world of sort of intrigue.
And
all that stuff.
tailoring
None of
s-
that. We don't build stuff with. No, we just came up with a name that felt right for us.
But I do love, well, actually, I
Yeah.
believe that there are no accidents when it
Right.
comes to stuff
No,
like
for
this.
sure.
Like, I think you all did it on purpose. Maybe you just didn't know it at the moment.
You've read your Derrida.
I have.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Clearly.
Yeah. The therapy, I want to go back to the therapy stuff because it's, there's so much, calling it therapy almost doesn't feel right because it's almost like the therapists who work at this firm, or you wouldn't even call them therapists,
Correct.
They're
what do you-
functioning as performance coaches.
performance
in their
coaches,
mind, yeah.
basically. So they're like, I see them as being like the NFL doctors whose main loyalty is to the team.
We think about it
I
all.
broke
that's
my
a
leg,
great. We think
get
about.
back out there.
Yes. And we use that imagery.
We talk about was it Matthew Modine in Any Given Sunday
I think it's in-
versus James Woods.
Right.
Episode
that-
12, yeah.
In that, don't we reference it? We reference
We
that
say,
in the
I don't want you
12th
to be
episode.
that kind of doctor who sends them into the concussion protocol.
Yeah.
I want you to be the one who tapes them back up, gives them
Right.
smelling salts, and sends them back in.
And that was like in our heads, the Modine James Woods conversation in Any Given Sunday. That's one of those like references that we don't say what it is,
Right.
but that's for sure right. I mean, Wendy for sure is a performance coach, an MD.
Trained in
Wendy's
therapy,
a
but-
trained
Yeah.
medical doctor, but before we started the first season, before we shot the pilot, we got Maggie Siff on the phone with Tony Robbins. And
Oh.
Tony, Dave and I are executive producers of that documentary on Tony, and we're friends, and we went to Tony for advice in this area. And we just spoke to him today, and he's
Is that like
gonna give a
meeting the
little-
Godfather?
Yes, yes it is. So, but like a beneficent, an incredibly beneficent godfather.
The therapy stuff, though, you have this. Your character's responses in those scenes is interesting because it's almost like a purely performance, action-driven way of reading everything that's happening in that room. And like there's this one part where you say, the culture is set at the top. Axe likes me, so everyone else likes me. Either they recognize a part of themselves or they see something they can use. In Axe's case, I'd imagine it both. And I laughed out loud at that scene because it's like, why do you even need to be in this room? If you have that kind of read on it. Did you talk to anybody who's like, do you have like advisors on the show who do the jobs or know the jobs that are represented on the show?
We do.
So did you know what you were getting into in those scenes just beyond what's on the page? Like, did you have a wider context for what's happening in those scenes?
Can you be more specific?
I mean, do you know what the ulterior motives are and what? I guess what I'm asking is, when you're reacting in those scenes, it seems like you have a higher level of awareness than almost any other character who is in those scenes. And I feel like that's one of the reasons why Taylor ends up in charge of the performance reviews.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm not trying to play stump the band. It's
no,
just, yeah.
I'm just thinking. I mean, it's interesting because on the one hand, like I only received the script for the episode that we were doing. I didn't have any information. I didn't have any information as to where Taylor's character was going to take them over the course of the season. So in that scene, I'm just playing the scene.
Right.
Yeah.
And any sort of intellectual information that you're perceiving Taylor having that is
Yeah.
deeper than what's happening in the moment, I would say thank you, because that's a compliment to my acting, I suppose.
It is, yeah.
Because like I said, I didn't have any knowledge of what was coming ahead, and I think that lends itself to the fact that I was just playing the truth of every moment, and that's what people
Well,
are
the
picking
scenes
up
were
on.
designed, so the first scene with the therapist is with that Dr. Gus guy, and so
Yes.
that's like a mandatory rotational thing. And so the scenes were designed as a test of the doctors from Taylor. And Taylor goes and puts himself in this guy's hands for a moment and has a momentary pleasant surprise that something intelligent is said. And then the guy betrays it completely. That's more of a referendum on that guy. When Taylor goes back with Wendy, you know, we intentionally started it with the same rap. Taylor says the same thing to see how differently Wendy reacts. And then the scene changes a little bit. And after the first visit, where I guess Taylor is sort of analyzing the analyst, they decide to put themselves in this person's hands more going forward because the person passes, basically.
And that's
the
moment,
way we looked at
that
it.
moment that you referenced when Taylor says the same reason anyone, like that moment was a lot of that moment was written by Adam Perlman, who's a great writer who works with us. And there's a C, I mean, that's A and B, but the C part of that is actually, as much as Taylor does know, Wendy's able to offer something. When he says there's a third reason.
Right.
And so in that moment there, where Wendy's listened and absorbed it, they actually really make this kind of a connection. But part of it is Taylor and Axe are both geniuses, right? They're intellectual geniuses. They have the rarest level of IQ. That's part of what they see in one another. And so Taylor is able to read people in a different way. Taylor processes incredibly quickly.
Right.
And at a much greater speed than most people. And we've sat with some of these people in the hedge fund world, and they do. It's staggering how quickly they can process information
What were you
and
gonna-
synthesize
you were
it.
gonna-
Oh, just that I think, you know, one of the reasons Taylor decides to stay at Axe Capital is because Bobby shows up to the challenge. And one of the reasons Taylor decides to show a little bit of themselves to Wendy is because Wendy steps up to the challenge in the moment. I don't think Taylor is afraid of challenging people and saying, like, I'm smart. Like, can you keep up? Because if you can't, I don't have time for you.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this world that you're portraying is not known as especially diverse or tolerant necessarily. And I wonder, are there any models for this character?
No.
No.
Have we come across a gender non-binary super genius in one of these hedge funds?
Well, I'd settle for a gender non-binary person working in the hedge fund industry.
But we don't
with some
think, I would say, we don't
experience,
think
yeah.
of it like
Yeah.
leading, as you said,
Yeah.
the show isn't leading with, Taylor is not first to us, gender non-binary,
Yeah.
and second to us, this ambitious super genius who could be studying with Fama in Chicago, but instead is studying with Bobby Axelrod, right?
Right.
It's all the same thing. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure the premise for me of that question is, the truth is this sui generis thing available out there?
Yes.
We haven't come across it yet.
That was
This
what I
exact
meant.
combination
Yeah.
of things.
Yeah.
It's
not
but
like
the
you
way
can
hedge
go
fund
and,
people react to it's been incredibly satisfying to watch. They love Taylor.
Yeah.
And some of the hedge fund principles are,
Yeah.
you know, you don't want to get too general with this stuff, but hedge funds are different than standard Wall Street, where the investment banks are like these very white bread, waspy, traditional places. Like the hedge funds can be different. Some hedge fund guys are socially progressive types, you know, fiscally they're whatever, conservative. They like Republican tax laws because it benefits them, but in their private life, they're not like that. They're more into democratic ideals. So, you know, there's a place for that. That's why they relate to it. They think, oh, I get that because I would fancy myself reacting to pure value in that way,
And
putting
beyond-
everything else aside.
Totally true. And beyond that, I wasn't playing a semantic game with you. There are hedge fund managers I've met, billionaires, who are very, very much like Taylor.
Uh-huh.
So that person, I can think of two people who are hedge fund billionaires who started, I think, very much thinking about the world the way Taylor does at the beginning of the show,
Right.
and who found themselves along this path, perhaps losing sight of some of those things despite being super geniuses. And so we've sat with those people, and so some of them, many of them started out as greedy monsters, but not all of them did. Some of them started out as people really interested in these complex questions and had theories that they were trying to prove. And then as those theories started to become proven, and then they started getting this incredibly outsized reward for it, just got drawn to it. And so that is something we're really interested in. So that person does exist. They just may not be gender non-binary.
Right.
But to me, that they still have much more in common with Taylor than less in common by dint of their gender identification.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, but the purpose, I should clarify and say the purpose for asking that is from an actor standpoint. When you're playing a person, a particular type of character, there's often a resource available to you in terms of research of, here is a person who has been through this or has been in a situation like this or has certain characteristics in common. Why don't you spend the day with them talking to them? You might get some ideas. And I wondered if you had an opportunity to do anything like that.
No, not in particular.
Yeah.
But also I will say that Brian and David were available for any questions that I had. We had any number of people on set who I could go to and say, like, what does this actually mean, or how does that break down? And so I felt like I always had a place to go to ask any questions that I had. And if I didn't, I did independent research on my own, but not on any specific person.
Has your life changed in any significant way beyond being a TV star now?
I love it.
I mean, is playing this role, has being on this show, made you change your views, your behavior, your practices, your things you're interested in?
No, it's only deepened them. It's only, the way in which it's changed my life is that it's given me visibility and a platform that I didn't have before to share who I've always been with the world, which I'm really grateful for. And whether it's through my acting or just through who I am as a person and the things that I fight for individually as an artist, the platform that I've received because of the show is the greatest change that's come to me and the one I'm the most grateful for.
What are some of the reactions that fans of the show have to your character? When people come up to you, if they approach you on the street and say, oh, you're Taylor, do they just say, yay, good job, or do they go deeper than that?
It varies. There's a lot of like, yo, we love Taylor at the office, like while sort of backing away slowly. And there's a lot of like silent, sort of like I'll walk by people and they'll just go like, which I think is super cool. And then I've been at an audition where another actor has come up to me, which is super cool when people who are your contemporaries are watching what you're doing and respecting your art. That's super cool.
You've also gotten those letters.
And then on top of that, I've gotten messages and letters from strangers all over the world of varying ages saying how much not only Taylor means to them, but I mean to them as a non-binary actor, being out there, being visible, just being who I am. People are feeling less alone. People are feeling like they can follow and achieve their dreams. And it's a silver lining that you hope for when you do something like this, but seeing it actually come to fruition is just extraordinary.
It reminds me a bit of earlier in this festival, I interviewed Rami Malek from Mr. Robot. And his description, and also we just did a panel on Orphan Black, and one of the themes that's sort of been running through this festival is the sense of feeling seen, of a character making people feel seen, and it sounds like people feel seen because of this character.
Yeah.
What can you do with that beyond the part that you're playing now? Like, are you involved in causes, or are you thinking about what the next role is, or you're generating your own projects, or?
Yes, and yes.
Okay, let's hear it.
Well, so in the immediate future, I've been invited and have accepted the invitation to speak at the Pride event in DC this Sunday at the rally and the march, which is super exciting. So that's just one area in which I'm sort of now, as I said, the platform and the visibility is giving me the ability to be a part of sort of major national and international events like that. On top of that, my partner and I co-founded a production company called Mirror Fire Productions, which our goal is to produce content that supports and uplifts historically marginalized and historically disenfranchised people. That's work that I do on my own outside of whatever else I'm collaborating with anyone on. And on top of that, you know, I want to play parts for which I'm the best actor, and parts which excite me and challenge me and hopefully teach me something new about the world and about myself. So to that extent, you know, whether that person, that character I end up playing is non-binary, or they're a woman, or they're a man, I'm excited for every challenge and adventure that comes my way.
When you look back over the arc of Taylor's appearance on the show, what are some of the moments that stand out to you as writers where you said, and producers, where you said, oh, that's more than I expected, or that's different than I expected, or?
I mean, all of it is more than we expected in a way. You know,
Is there a signature moment, like, you know, like I keep thinking of Paul Newman, and we were talking about this a little bit backstage, but the way that this character moves through the world, and I know that that's sort of a period of American character that's very important to both of you.
yeah, I mean, the scenes that you picked were great examples.
Yeah.
Those were some of our favorites, you know.
I mean, I know you love, and I do too, the episode John Singleton directed, episode 7 of season 2, when you expect, I mean, it's one of those things where you've been led, perhaps, by your own preconceptions of somebody, like what you imagine somebody like this to think about and to be like. When Taylor and Singleton shot it so amazingly, and that was a beautiful collaboration between a master director and an actor, but that moment when Taylor just, in quoting Taleb, talks about the fact that maybe you got to let this town die.
That was a
And
great
that's
scene.
what nature is.
Yeah.
So it's like that, and then in the very first episode, you know, Taylor's playing that, Asia's playing that vegan scene with Dan Soder, who we all love, but he's not a trained actor. He's great. And could Asia, you know, you're throwing Asia into a situation there where Dan has to kind of be the straight person, right? He's being the straight man, and Asia has to be funny with that, of course, I'm a vegan thing, which is one of those things which we knew was funny on the page when we wrote it, but can it play? Can that scene live? That scene was not integral to the plot of the show. It was integral to the plot of the season, but like if that doesn't fly, that's one of those, that scene comes out of the first episode of the second season, and you meet Taylor in the second episode. But Asia nailed it, and that made us know that it worked. And then, yeah, so then that, and then 7, and then, you know, that scene on the dock
Yeah.
with Axe, where Taylor is really coming into their, like, is just taking it
Yeah.
and saying, kind of like you said, Axe is dropping this science on Taylor the whole time. But in episode 12, I mean, Taylor's the one who's saying it. Here's why you have to do this.
Yes.
And here's what's in your best interests,
Right.
right? Flips it completely.
Yeah.
And Axe goes with it. And that is no easy feat. I mean, that's the kind of thing that you write on a wing and a prayer, right? I mean, and you just,
Well,
we
by
knew
then
by then
we-
we
by
had an
then we
actor who
knew,
could do it.
yeah.
But then Asia steps up on that day. I wasn't there that day. We shot that. You were there.
It was
I remember-
very cold, so.
I stayed. I'm not going out there. And I had to be in editing. There was important editing to be done, and it was early. And Dave, you lived
6
closer.
a.m.
You
he's
lived
editing.
closer to where I'm right in the editing room, at home on the laptop. But you called me and you said, "Oh, that was they
Yeah, it
they
was a
nailed
great
it.
scene.
It was incredible."
Would it be
Thanks
o-
for being out there.
I gotcha.
Would it be okay if we took a few questions from the audience? Okay,
That'd be
great.
amazing.
Well, Taylor and I also use they, them, their pronouns, I'll say. And in addition to that, I mean, I think I'd be curious to hear what your answer to that is. But I would say, just hearkening back to something I said before, which is that, you know, at every moment that Taylor sort of goes like, is this okay? Bobby's right there going like, yeah, it's fine. And so I think that's the reason why we see Taylor take those steps, take that journey, get the apartment, fly the private jet, you know, all that stuff.
I think you think you're still holding out the real thing, even if you're taking the external
Yeah.
material thing. You
Good
think,
point.
well, I'm not changing. I just, rent a private plane now. I'm still me.
Yeah.
And then you just, you start to drift away a little.
The other thing that I left out before is that one of the other ways we knew that Asia really could do this is any scene, normally people, when they have to play a scene with Kelly O'Coin, who plays Dollar Bill, they're like, how am I going to do it? He's so terrible at acting. And then in all the, it's Kelly, Kelly O'Coin is here in the room, Dollar Bill, ladies and gentlemen. That's so great. The lights came up in the theater, but when Taylor made it seem like Kelly could act, we were all.
Then we knew, yes.
It was an
When they could
amazing
carry
moment
him,
for us.
yeah.
I remember. You saved my job. Really, an amazing thing.
Well, we decide on all the parts. Asia came in.
Well, I know sometimes in NBC and CBS, the production companies themselves and the.
I got you. So we're very fortunate in this case. There's no production company.
Right.
We're the only exec producers. And the few core execs at Showtime are amazingly supportive, and we're all in line with the same vision.
You were
So
collaborative
there's
with them.
our
casting director.
Yeah, our casting director and
Allison Estrin.
Allison Estrin is amazing. She's here, and the head of casting for Showtime. No, not here tonight.
Oh.
But New York, New York. There's very little infighting on that stuff. When Asia came in, it was the first episode, so we had the ability to be in the room and do in-person auditions. After the first episode or two, it starts to become an on-tape thing because we're just not around and able to be sitting down for 3-hour sessions or something like that. But we look at all these auditions.
We trust Allison incredibly, so we don't say to Allison, for a role that's coming in for a day, send us 50 people that you auditioned.
Yeah.
We'll say to Allison, send us your 2 favorites and tell us who's your favorite. And very, very, very often, that person ends up in the part. But but we love Allison is brilliant at what she does and understands what we care about, and so that is just a really collaborative process. And she's willing, as often as that, if we say like none of these work, then we move on, go to someone else.
Okay, anybody else?
Well, we had written 4 or 5 of the episodes before we shot. We'd finished writing 4 episodes before we shot the first episode, and had written a lot of 5 and 6, but they weren't finished. I think that making the decision to have 7 be the way that it was had a lot to do with knowing that Asia could do it, as Dave said. So, yeah, of course, you're going back and forth. I mean, when I talked about the affect, which is what you're talking about, which is the ability, the secret thing I'm not going to say, but which is how much warmth can exist. It's something we all talked about. So that it's not that you're adjusting the writing so much, it's that you're talking about how's this stuff played, what does it mean? In fact, I'll go further. We hardly ever had to talk about it. We would say one or 2 words, and that's it, because we are so incredibly in sync with who this character is. We have talked about this more tonight. We don't, in general, the 2 of us want to let our actors work.
Sure.
So we don't intellectualize this stuff with the actors. Like if they have questions, we're there at any time, all the time. We'll talk through any of it. But if an actor shows up ready to go, like that's wonderful, and we don't want to get in the way. And so it's really like Asia taking it and running, and then maybe asking a question, like, hey, do you think Taylor at this point would open their arms that much? I remember it was one of the few moments we actually talked about, and we were like, yes, we're at that place. Like, yeah, do it. That feels right.
Which scene was this?
The
biker-
biker moment, because
Yeah.
as you said, Taylor, even in episode 3, is still very
Constricted,
tight, so to speak. And so to have this person suddenly become open in this way, would it be sort of too much too soon?
So I remember we discussed it, and we're like, yeah, let's do that thing. Go.
Yeah.
But that whole conversation lasted 20 seconds, and then you ran back up the stairs. Remember, you came down the stairs, and we talked about it, and then you were like, great, that's it, got it, and ran back up the stairs and did it.
Yeah, and I think Alex even was like, let's do one, and then may I answer?
Yeah,
And then
please.
I really want to hear what
You
say, but
answer.
I want to answer before. I think for me, what happens in that balcony scene in episode too, is that it's not that Bobby is recognizing that Taylor and he have the same genius. It's that he's recognizing that the genius that they each possess could isolate them significantly from the world around them. And it's that isolating feeling, I think, that is able to bring them closer together, to say, like, Bobby actually has a contemporary in Taylor. And that's why Taylor decides to stay, because Taylor's going, you are as smart, if not smarter than I am, therefore I have something to gain and learn from you.
Yeah.
And I'll say,
Oh,
you know,
sorry.
in the first episode,
That's-
there's a run that Axe goes on right off the top where he just like breaks down this understanding of the market. He goes on for like 2 minutes straight and just like blows Ben Kim's mind. And, you know, it's just a question of how many times you're going to play that moment versus the moments when a guy gets some information or plays some angle that's over the line it's a little bit juicier and it seems to have a more lingering impact than watching a guy actually be good at it. You know, even criminals who've gone away for insider trading probably made the 90% of their fortune by being good at trading stocks, and then occasionally they go for the dirty edge and go over the line.
But even the thing Axe says at the racetrack, which is by looking at the thing, he was able to figure out, by understanding the odds. Axe is a math genius also. And it's all laid into the show. It's just a question of what you're watching.
And yeah, Taylor's in a state of more of a state of purity in the beginning, and he's not.
Yes.
Hi, yes. Thank you, Asia. Wonderful performance.
Thank you.
Tremendous. I love it.
Thank you.
This question is for the writers.
That was well done. Very nice.
Walked you right into
I
it.
saw it coming.
I'm a production person also. I just swore that.
You want to take the third part first? Go ahead.
What was it? Did she use the term industrial psychology?
Yeah.
Yes. Amazing.
Yeah, we're
8 years at the Mayo Clinic
that you did. No, I mean
as an inpatient.
we talked. I mean we do.
I guess field research is what you would.
No, we know.
No, I
we
know, I
We
know.
know. Yeah, we've read about.
No, we're laughing at
We
ourselves.
do the work. We did the work. Like we
Field
read a lot of-
research, interviews, reading. We've met with hundreds of people who do these jobs.
But I mean, if you're asking about the performance coach aspect, for instance, like we don't. When you think about Taylor and you think about the gender non-binary aspect of Taylor, like we sat with people who, before writing it, when we had the idea, we sat with people who identify as gender non-binary and talked about what that life was like. The whole writer's room did. We did separately, the writer's room did, and we asked a lot of questions, and then people were very open in
They looked
their
at the early scripts. too.
answers. And yeah, we showed script pages to people to make sure that all made sense. And then I wasn't like kidding about the Tony Robbins thing. I mean, Tony is one of the people who invented a certain kind of performance coach psychology. I mean, I know all the stuff that influenced him too. And so we talked to him, and then everyone in the writer's room read, I'm not going to say what the books are, but a bunch of books about this stuff so that we could understand it. You know, books about industrial psychology, books about performance coaches, books about various modalities of therapy. And so we have all studied that stuff pretty hardcore way in order to then, you just want to use, I mean, you know, you end up using so little of it, but you want to understand it.
No.
Well, what kind of, we have many consultants.
We have.
Psychologist.
No.
No, not on staff. But we call them. Like people are, especially when you have a show up and going, people are really willing to talk to you. So if we have a specific question about how something would work, we can call them. And for real, like today, we did speak to Tony about a very specific thing we want to do in season 3. Like
Because Tony coaches a hedge fund billionaire.
yeah, he's a performance coach for Paul Tudor Jones, publicly, who's one of the most successful hedge funders ever.
But we have a Wall Street consultant every season, and we have a U.S. attorney consultant every season.
Well, just to give a little bit of background to the question, so Showtime graciously decided to submit me for a nomination for an Emmy for Best Supporting actor or actress on Billions, and they didn't know how I would like to be submitted, and so they came to me and they asked me, and after speaking with Showtime, I realized that I didn't actually have enough information to answer the question for myself whether I wanted to be submitted as an actor or an actress, and after speaking with the Academy and learning that the rules have always stated any performer can enter either category for any reason, and actor is a non-gendered, non-sexed word I've used for a long time, I chose supporting actor, and I will say that I made that choice because of the options that we're given now, actor and actress, and how I feel about those words and what those words actually mean. And that's where we're at now. And my feeling from my conversation with the Academy was that they're excited about what the possibilities are and what changes could be coming. There are a lot of things to consider when it comes to changing categories, not only sort of what would we change them to, but like how long does the show air for then on television, or how many people are nominated or not. You know, there are a lot of things to consider, but what gives me hope is the fact that that's now part of the conversation, and I would say, although I'm not on the phone with the Academy every day, it's out there now, and it's a conversation that more people are having, and so that's exciting. So we'll see. We'll all see.
I've had a number of conversations about this issue, like why do we have a Best Actor and Best Actress category? And when I bring that up to actors, often the response I get is, well, you can't get rid of the Best Actress or Best Supporting Actress category because men would get nominated for everything. But then that's like, well, that's an institutional, industrial problem that needs to be addressed.
Well, and I also think, well, yes, and I would say that so far, because we've had the category of actress for so long, we haven't had to talk about that exact thing.
Yeah.
That it is a Band-Aid for an issue that's existed for a long time in Hollywood, you know. And so that's the conversation I'm interested in having, which is like, why will men get nominated more if we get rid of the word actress? Why do we have, you know, a pay gap simply because some people decide to call themselves actresses? What is that about? You know, those are the conversations I'm interested in having. Well, there are layered answers to that question. First of all, that non-binary people exist. First of all, that we exist in the world, and we exist in every manner. We're lawyers, we're doctors, we work at hedge funds, you know, we are baristas, we're any number of things that anyone else is, and we have the ability to be flawed and righteous and anything in between, just like everyone else. And on top of that, I would say that I think it's really important to me to be having conversations about the fact that we have assigned sex and gender identity for so long, and that those things are actually different, and that everyone has a gender identity, everyone has been assigned a sex at birth, and your gender identity either conforms to that sex or it doesn't. I think that's something that's really important to get out there, because I think a lot of people think that it's just trans and non-binary people that have a gender identity, but it's all of us. And I think that that's, you know, it's one of the ways that conversations about whether, like you said, whether it's racism or patriarchy or sexual orientation or gender identity, these conversations are conversations that we all need to be having. They're not conversations that should just be happening within the marginalized communities that are experiencing the marginalization.
Yeah, I'd say that we just had this conception of a character that we found fascinating, and we thought it was going to be great in this world and in this story. I think if we would have led with these greater social outcomes, I don't think that it would have worked as well. I think it has to come from an organic place, like within the dramatic structure of the thing. So that's how we went at
Yeah,
it.
we're really rarely interested in answering questions in the work. We're much more interested in asking them, and we're much more interested in pursuing them. So we have always led with our obsessions and fascinations from our first movie, and meaning we were fascinated by what it meant to be a poker player, like what it meant to live in that world. And we heard the term, we heard about the idea of people introducing themselves with their pronouns from younger people, kids. And in hearing about that, it rang off of us in that way that when you're like, well, what is that? I don't understand that. I'm 50 years old. at the time. I'm 51 now, but I think I was 49 or 50. And I was like, wait, I don't understand. That's a part of the world I don't know. So we dove in to figure it out and then realized what a great thing to introduce, because it ties into this question, I mean, the first answer about the extrinsic versus the intrinsic, which this question of sex and gender is all about also, but in lots of different ways. But that question, I don't know, just lived for us.
Yeah.
And we kept thinking about the character, and yeah, we did consider like.
At a certain point, we realized, okay, this is going to be a platform in some way, or this is going to draw attention. I don't think that I didn't consciously know that it was going to be the first gender non-binary character in a major show. I assumed, okay, this must have been in some show or movie that I didn't see, but that was cool.
Yeah, it wasn't. That's why it was so important to us. You'll note, Taylor does not identify their pronouns in the first episode. Mm-hmm. We don't speak to it in the first episode. Mm-hmm. You just meet Taylor sitting there with Mafee. In the second episode, that Taylor's given the opportunity to introduce themselves, and that's so we weren't this wasn't something we were leading with. We wanted you to take in the character and figure out, make your own initial judgment, and then.
And I think the thing is that you asked this earlier, are there any non-binary people working in hedge funds that I modeled myself after?
Yeah.
And the answer to that is no, but I would bet you that there are non-binary people working in hedge funds. We just don't know about them, and or they may not be comfortable identifying as non-binary because of the environment they're in. But Billions is a really good example of art reflecting life. There are non-binary people and trans people everywhere doing all the same things that we're all doing, and I think this show just made the choice to say, okay, well, that's already happening in the world, so we might as well integrate it into our world.
And there's no doubt that the next generation of people who do this will have no problem, like I say, young
representation
people,
will just
kids,
exist,
told
yeah.
us, people in their teens are so much more comfortable with this language.
Yeah.
Well, that's one of the things that I was so pleasantly surprising to me about this story, about Taylor's story in this first season, was that was such a very small part of what the story was about. And basically, you gave Taylor the kind of story that like a cis actor would have on any other show, where the question is, it's an internal conflict that's about values related to money and capital and these other things, and the way that the language, like, it's so important on the show, the way that language is used to redefine things so that they're acceptable to do and not feel guilty. That's like something that's constantly happening on the show, and that plays into it as well.
We're really interested in that kind of rhetoric,
Yeah.
for always,
So I think we're out of time, but thank you so much to our panel.
Thank you,
to
guys.
Showtime,
Thank you.
and you've been a great audience.
Thanks, Matt.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
All right.